Welcome to the estate at River Run. I'm Kim Moody.
And I'm Andrew Moody.
And we are so glad to welcome you here. This place is incredibly special to us, and we wanted to tell you a little bit about our journey, what it took to get here, and what life looks like on a day-to-day basis around this property. One of our best friends, he equates what I do to the Super Bowl. He was like, it's basically like you run the Super Bowl, you know? It's the biggest day of their career, of their lives, of that moment. And you're responsible for it. How does that make you feel? We would be in this long tunnel and see this little glimmer of light, and we'd finally step into it, and then the next awful set of protracted roadblocks would happen.
One thing after the other.
For literally a year and a half, I think,
right.
Maybe more, where we just got jerked around time and time again. And I don't think that we would have been able to do it had we not had each other. This is crazy, what are we doing? And I just kept thinking about our kids and our family and how hard it was while they were so small and staying in hotels and working these weddings across the state. And I just kept thinking about this property and how we just knew that it was the right thing. We knew that this was God's plan for our life. I've been a wedding planner for 18 years, and in the luxury market is where our home has been the last 7 or 8. And with that, it means traveling all over the state, higher expectation, higher end client, higher budget, more vendors, more things to manage. The wedding industry has had my heart for a long time. Before I was a wedding planner, I worked in bridal shops and did catering. So basically, since I was about 14, 15 years old, I've been in this industry. So I really don't know anything different. Corporate America was never for me. I've always been a small business owner and entrepreneur. And the wedding industry, specifically in that luxury event space, really is the perfect place for me. My husband, Andrew, has always been very supportive of us as a small business, and we've been married 18 years as well, coming up on 18 years. And they say when you are married to someone you work with every day that it's basically doubled. So, you know, we think we're about 35 years in. But Andrew's been great and very supportive. And so after our second child was born, once we had a daughter, we kind of knew it was time to make some changes and some adjustments in our work life and our balance. And I was coming home on Sunday afternoons exhausted from working until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then spending 3 hours driving in from whatever property I was working at or from the hotel that we stayed in. And we just knew it wasn't going to be sustainable.
Kim and I discussed that the next step would be to start a wedding venue so that we could not have to travel every weekend, could be home with the kids more and things like that. So we started the search.
So after Carrington was born, we set out looking for properties, and we probably sorted through maybe 40 or so real estate listings. we had a great agent that was working with us, and she sent us so many properties, and we probably took a look physically at 8 or 10 of them, and nothing really felt right. It just wasn't stirring inside us. We knew that we should really feel it, kind of when a bride searches for a wedding gown and they know it's the one, or they know they're ready to get married, they know they've got the one, and we just never really felt that electric feeling. And one day we got an email from our real estate agent, Susan Morris, and she titled it Holy Hell. And I look back on that, and it's so funny because I remember exactly where I was when we got the real estate listing from her. And, our daughter was in my arms, and our little boy was a toddler at the time, and he was like at my feet, probably tugging on me, and I have my laptop on my lap and opening that listing, and all I could see was this tunnel vision to my computer, and like everything else was just disappearing around me. And it was the real estate listing for River Run Manor, which at that time was vacant and had been vacant for a little while. And she had not sent it to us prior to that because it was so out of our price point. And they had just had a little price reduction. And so she said, okay, well, it's worth sending. I know they're gonna fall in love with it. And she was very hesitant to even send it because it was so out of reach for us. And we took a look at the listing, I don't know, probably 100 times, watched the video backwards and forwards so often, and it was all we could think about. So 2 or 3 weeks after she first sent it, we said, we've got to see the inside of it. I know it's so out of reach and so unattainable, but if the floor plan isn't connected and the rooms aren't spaced out appropriately, it's not even worth dreaming of, because weddings have such a specific flow to them that we need. And the first day we looked at this place in person, we came and visited. I drove through a couple of times, and I was so enamored, and the scale of it was just so awe-inspiring. That 3/4 of a mile drive off of River Road, and knowing that connection it had to the James River, I just couldn't even process it. It was so overwhelming. It was so perfect. So in October of 2018, we got to see it for the first time, and we crossed the threshold of the front door, and it was just the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. I immediately started to weep. It was just so incredible. And it was like this place that we dreamed of actually existed. And it literally was like a unicorn, like finding a unicorn. There was another property at the time we were pretty serious about moving forward with. This kind of came in like a wrecking ball to that plan. And our emotions the whole time we were walking through this space were just unbelievable, because it was like our heart felt like it was just beating out of our chest. Like we knew that this was where we were supposed to be. We felt like, God was just like stirring something inside of us, that it was, that we were supposed to be the caretakers of this place. And it just felt like this massive dream that there was no way in the world we could ever make it a reality. And we saw the property, and we were just so enamored. Room after room after room, it just exceeded every expectation that we had, and it was just so incredible. It was like we just couldn't believe something like this actually existed in real life, and that this was so close to Richmond and not too far from Charlottesville, and just that a family had breathed so much life into this property, and they had had so many wonderful memories and so many fantastic dreams here, and so many incredible parties had been hosted here over the years, and just that something like this already existed. Before we set foot on the grounds here, we thought that we were looking for a farmhouse or some type of property on the water that we could build a ballroom on. And then when we walked in and saw that this already existed, with the background that I have in architecture and construction, it was like the level of appreciation that we had for this place was just insurmountable. So after looking at the property and walking it through for a couple of hours that day, we went home and really reworked our business plan. That visit enabled us to get floor plans together to kind of look at how many people we could fit in a space, what was going to be appropriate uses for each of the ballrooms, and how we would utilize the property. So we went into just really hardcore business plan mode. It was almost haunting. It was all we could think about, dream about, talk about. It literally consumed us. And here we are with like, a toddler and a newborn, and it's the last thing we need to be doing is taking on this massive project to shoulder. But it just felt like that was the right next steps for us, and some kind of way we needed to be able to figure out how to make it work. And we knew it had to make sense financially. We knew it was a pretty major risk for our family and our kids and their future. And it was a big decision to make, and we didn't want it to be an emotional one. We had such a strong connection to the property. I think from the second that we set foot on it, we didn't want that to be what was driving the decision. We knew from doing weddings for so long, there's a list of things that really had to be on the checklist for people to be able to host at places like this. And we were trying to look objectively at that and kind of put it at a distance, but it was so hard because we just loved it so much. We tried to talk ourselves out of it a little bit, I think, because we realized we were going to be working until we were basically in a wheelchair to be able to pay for it. But the next steps from that really were sitting down and having real conversations with the county and the building officials and zoning and planning. And in January of 2019, so we spent October of 18 until January of 19 doing our business plan, doing just realistic property setups, floor plans, figuring out the spaces that we thought we could renovate, utilize, and really like bring it to the next level, because it was a private residence. It was never built for what we wanted to use it for. It was a home, and so we were just fortunate that it had a few ballrooms inside. So we had to make a list of all of the things that we could do that were within our reach financially, and then also the logistical list of construction needs that the county would have for us for life safety purposes, which was pretty intense. And we sat down in January of 2019 with all the powers that be in Goochland County, and we had some pretty stressful meetings and some tough conversations, and we learned that it was going to be pretty difficult to do what we were hoping and planning to do here. And I think we walked away from that meeting like wondering if this was the right thing or if we were really in over our heads, because financially we knew that we were. But just logistically, I do have a background in construction and architecture and design, and that was exceptionally helpful to try and translate everything that was being told to us. Andrew's background is in property management and accounting. So the two worlds fusing together under the premise of being able to do weddings at this place, it was almost like everything in our lives that had happened before this professionally had built us up to this moment to be prepared for this. So it was really, felt like it was like a divine order of things that had come into place before that moment. And I think we walked out of that meeting wondering if we were doing the right thing or if we should just take a step back and shelve this project. And it was just too big of a project for two people with two small kids to take on. And we had some long talks about it. We did a lot of praying about it and trying to figure out what was the right thing for us to do. You know, we had a perfectly reasonable wedding business that was doing well and we were successful. We had 2 retail stores that were also doing well and successful. And why were we, especially at that point in our life with 2 small kids, rocking the boat so much? And we kept asking ourselves things, but it just felt like the wedding business was feeding into this. This was our next step, and the retail store just was never, part of our heart's desire. And we wanted to spend the next chapters of our career, the last half of our career, doing something we really loved and doing it together as a family. And so we just decided that we were just going to plunge forward and go all in. So we went through a series of phone calls with people that we knew that were real estate investors, people that were developers, brokers, people we didn't know. We called so many people we didn't know if they had an interest or background in hospitality and they were successful, and we had any sort of somewhat lukewarm connection to them, we reached out. And everything just was dying on the vine, and it just wasn't the right fit. And one of the things that we kept hoping for was, and we kept praying for, was a business partner who didn't want to be involved in the day-to-day, and somebody that would allow us to use the backgrounds that we've had and you know, with a mutual respect, just be able to kind of run this place for them. And we started to think that didn't exist, and we reached out to the family that owned this property directly, which is a big no-no in the real estate world. You're supposed to do everything through the agents. And we just reached out and told them what our plans were for this place, wrote them a long letter and said, you know, these are what our dreams are. Is there any way you would own or finance this for us? Is there any way you'd want to be our business partner in this? You know, we found that there were 4 heirs to the property, and it was in an estate, so all 4 of them had to be in agreement, and there were a couple of them that were not accepting of that idea or not interested. You know, this wasn't where they grew up, but they just kind of were ready to wash their hands of it. And then the other 2 were much more interested in it. They were much more connected to this place, and they loved the idea that it could be reopened as a venue and you know, almost a gift to the public to be able to get in here, because it had always been so private. They felt like their dad would love that. So we chased that rabbit hole for a little while, and that didn't pan out either. And we really were almost at the end of our rope. And we were so frustrated, you know, because we had spent, at that point, I mean, it had been 7-8 months just focused on this property by itself, like plus the 2 years prior to this, where we've been dreaming of something like this. And it just felt like we were so close, closer than we'd ever been, you know, but so far away financially. It was 4 times what we could afford, and it just was so insurmountable. And the family, through their real estate agent, reached out to us and said, we're gonna have a price reduction in the next month. We wanna give you a heads up about it because we want you to be able to jump on this, and we're hoping that this is gonna be like within reach for you if we can do this. But when we do it, it's gonna be aggressive, and a lot of people are gonna want it. We've had offers on it previously. We've had a lot of interest in it, and the right thing just hasn't panned out, and most people wanted it for a private residence. A lot of people wanted it as a getaway, if they celebrities from California or people in New York that were gonna fly in for the weekend. We heard about helicopter pads being on the front lawn. We heard about all-night parties and just all these crazy things that they wanted, that this was basically gonna be the next Playboy mansion on the East Coast. We were almost sick because we had exhausted every option we had. And we just kept praying about it and praying about it. And at the end of May of 2019, we went to the lake for Memorial Day weekend, thinking we were gonna like decompress away from the property situation. We were not gonna turn our computers on. We weren't gonna worry about this. We needed time to just focus on our kids and our family. And maybe this was just a dream that was too big for us and we had to shelve it. And when we were there, we were on the porch and the kids were playing in the sandbox, and my husband's a real estate agent, and he received a notification from the MLS system that the price had been reduced on this property, and it cut us like a knife because we knew it was just gonna open up this feeding frenzy in the market of all these people wanting this place that had been kind of on the periphery to begin with. And that's exactly what happened. And so we literally spent the next 2 or 3 days almost sick and ill, you know, just our stomachs in knots because we knew it was over. How'd that make you feel?
Yeah, well, definitely, I'm upset. You know, I don't know the best word to describe it, but, you know, kind of depleted, defeated, you know, at how we'd spent so much time and effort trying to secure the property and just couldn't make it work.
And it was almost like we were trying to come to terms with it being completely out of reach, and we just had to give it up. So we came home, and that Memorial Day Monday, my phone rang, and it was a very dear friend of mine from the Goochland area who owns a Montessori school and had been a very dear person in my life, who I'd met through Richmond Weddings. She has a venue, and I'd met her years before that at a bridal show. And she said, my husband and I went to River Run Manor today, and my heart stopped because I just knew, I'm like, she's calling to tell me she's gonna buy it. You know, she's just called, this is it, it's over. And I felt like I was almost like blacking out, like I couldn't even have the whole conversation. I was so not present with what she was saying. And then I was really trying to focus on what she was telling me on the phone, and she said, I've got you on speakerphone. Doug and I went and looked at it today, and we'd like to know if you and Andrew would like to be our business partners, if we go in 50-50 and we buy this together and you all run it as a wedding venue. And I was sitting on the floor, and I felt like I almost passed out with both of my kids at my feet, and I was like, wait, what? And so she repeated it, and they started asking questions, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is happening, this is real. And I felt like my heart was gonna skip out of my chest, and I was trying to be so calm because it was just processing a little bit slower. You know, of course the children are loud, and it's the evening, and they were ready to go to bed, and Andrew wasn't there. He was at work at his other office at the time. And I said, okay, let me talk to Andrew, and I'll let you know. I'll call you back tonight or tomorrow. And of course I called him right away, and he was like, are you kidding? This is crazy.
My name is Doug Adams, and I'm an investor in River Run. My wife Tamara, who's also a partner in this endeavor, has been in the wedding venue business for several years. Interestingly enough, she has a Montessori school, and we have a barn that is behind the Montessori school, which she rents out for barn weddings. She knows Kim. We've known Kim and Andrew for a while, and then their kids are in her school. So she was also in the real estate business years ago, and she's very connected in the real estate community. And when this place came on the market about 6 years ago, I guess, we had some friends who were looking for a place on the river. So we took the opportunity and the curiosity to come out and get a tour. It was she set up, and when we walked through the property, she kept saying, "This isn't a house. This is a wedding venue. This is a perfect wedding venue." And she, thought it was great. The friends did not make an offer on the property, so we sort of forgot about it. And about, I guess, maybe 3 years later, Kim came to see us and mentioned the fact that they had been looking at it and were trying to figure out a way to buy the property. And we remembered it, and I remembered the fact that my wife thought it would be, since there are more ballrooms than bedrooms in the place, it would be a perfect place for that high-end wedding venue. Andrew's a great accountant and a business guy, so we sat down and worked out a plan that looked pretty good to me. And so we all invested in it, and then found out it was going to cost a ton more than we thought it would because of the cost of getting it up to a commercial space. But we, dug through it, and these guys have done an incredible job. Worked really hard to get us to where we are now. I mean, the place is it's a social gathering place. It's so obvious, of any place, of any home I've ever seen. It's totally a spot for parties and events and celebrations and that sort of thing. And that's what kind of captures your imagination when you walk in the door. And beyond that, my first look at it, I would never have stepped up and done it myself. But when Kim came with a good plan, it made sense to me, so we invested in it.
And I think we texted back right away, and by the next day, the four of us had it under contract together. And from there, things just went full throttle. For all of the months of agony and waiting and how protracted that whole process was to get to that point, it was an insane level after that. So we put it under contract with the disclosure that it had to be approved to be a commercial venue through Goochland County. And what happened from there is a series of community meetings, Board of Supervisors meetings, county meetings, building inspections, Virginia Health Department inspections, engineering visits, parking lot visits, because this was just a home, so we had to do everything. And we started investing in some of the work that we knew was going to be pretty protracted and take a long time before we even owned it. And we just felt like, you know, we had this level of trust with the sellers, and they really wanted it to be us. I think they had multiple offers on the property, and I was told that they chose us. You know, there was other people that wanted this as a private residence, and they accepted our offer, even though it might not have been the highest. We went through an entire summer of engineering and field studies and feasibility studies, and every meeting you can imagine. We had so many meetings out here on the terrace, like locked out of the house because we don't even have a key, with so many different contractors and county administrators and, you know, building officials and all of this, and doing everything we could to help push the ball down the road. In the summertime, we started having community meetings as directed by the county officials, where we invited all the neighbors. A lot of times, I guess those things are done at libraries. We invited them here to the house, had one of our caterers prepare some food, and kind of had an open discussion with a lot of the neighbors. We invited them all in so we could talk with them through their concerns. There was a lot of nervousness from the neighbors. They were very concerned about the level of noise, what owning a wedding venue or having a wedding venue that close to them may look like, even though they're quite a ways away. We're on 62 acres. But you know, how that was going to affect their property values, how it was going to affect their life, and would there, you know, I think in their minds there was a lot of concern that there were these rowdy parties and frat party type feel. You know, that was what they were thinking a wedding reception was. And so we really went through a series of negotiations almost with them and with the county, and working through community meetings and visits here at the property, at some of the county boardrooms. It was a whole nother life that we had not expected that can of worms to be open. We thought it would be the greatest thing in the world.
We had a lot of shocks that hit us after we thought it was a simple thing of just buying a piece of property and turning it into a business. Didn't work out quite that way. First and foremost, of course, we're in a rural county and mostly agricultural properties, and this happened to be a large piece of property in a subdivision. And of course, you know, there's that NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. So everybody says, I don't want all that noise, I don't want all the lights and everything.
In September of 2019, we had our first Board of Supervisors meeting, and that was the meeting that was the vote to determine from the Board of Supervisors if we were going to be allowed to purchase the property. So meanwhile, the sellers had had this building under contract all of these months and taking care of it all of these months so patiently while we went through the process of what was required by us, you know, from the county. And the neighbors spoke out against it being a wedding venue, and we knew what to expect. I think we weren't in shock that they were concerned, but the level of concern still after the months of trying to, you know, assuage each other's fears and work through it respectfully. This was the culmination of that, and it wasn't going well for us, and it was very scary.
So when we had to go to the county to try to get a CUP, the neighbors showed up. And I don't blame them for this, by the way. I mean, I probably would have done the same thing, but they showed up and said, I don't think this is a really great idea because, again, lights and noise and that sort of thing, and I can understand that. So we spent a lot of time trying to convince them that it wouldn't be, that we would make sure that there wouldn't be lights and noise and that sort of thing.
Next public hearing item is in District 3, CU 2019-00011. Application filed by Andrew Moody for River Run Manor, LLC, requesting a conditional use permit for wedding and event venues at 2421 River Road West.
We wanted to say thank you to you all for hearing this case, because I know it's been a lot of contention. You've received a lot of emails, both for and against. And today, I'm so excited to release to you the Richmond area's newest event venue, the Estate at River Run. We are so excited to present to you all this gorgeous 61-acre Georgian revival mansion so that you can host your party with your family and friends. We think this is going to be an epic place to celebrate weddings and all of the fun things life has to offer, and we can hardly wait to have you here. But we were glad to hear their concerns, and I think we've really tried to be serious about easing their concerns and doing things that were respectful to them and that everybody could live with moving forward happily in Union. You know, we didn't want to go to Food Lion and run into people that hated us, and you know, we wanted to make sure we were respectful neighbors. So we had so many things going on, meanwhile raising 2 toddlers and running 2 retail stores with different locations and our wedding business as planners and florists and all of this. It was just an insane time. The meeting got pushed until the next month. They heard it as an open forum. I think at that time, one of the big concerns was that we were going to have a winery full-time as a tenant of the property at River Run, which seems like forever ago, like it wasn't. It's not even possible. And I think some of the concerns were related to that being a 7-day-a-week business here in a residential area in a farming community. As we were going through that process during that time, the winery kind of dropped out and we felt like, okay, maybe this is the push we needed. Maybe we can do it without that income, and that will be one less thing for our brides to have to contend with, and the scheduling will simplify, and as a family at the property, it will be less invasive to not have another business on property with us. So as we worked through the county meetings, and they kind of punted it down the road to the next month, and 30 days seemed like an eternity. And during that time frame, we still were doing feasibility studies. We had invested in engineering. We had started the health department projects. We had done so much work already. And to get to that point where we were, like, our future was in the palm of the votes of these Board of Supervisors, it was a really unsettling time. I kept looking at my kids in the audience of this meeting, and I'm, you know, at the podium, and I felt like I was being burned at the stake, like the Salem witch trials, and I'm looking in the audience, and my 2 children and my husband and our business partners, and the room full of so many people that were there speaking in our favor and supportive of us was just so heartwarming. But also there was, you know, a barrage of neighbors that were nervous, and rightfully so, about us taking over the property and what that was going to look like for them and what that was going to mean for them. And we just kept trying to do our best to assure them that we were real people too, and we wanted to be respectful of them. And the meeting went until 1:30 in the morning, and we didn't get a vote. It got tabled to the following day or the day after, I can't even remember. So we had an hour and 10-minute drive home that night in the dark. The kids were, you know, asleep in the car with my husband, like he was listening to it on his cell phone, watching me, you know, present to the Board of Supervisors, and they couldn't even decide. They couldn't take a vote. They needed to take a break and reconvene and get advice from the county attorney and make sure everything was in compliance that they were doing. And then that same week, they met again and gathered again for a special session, and they voted. So here we come back in there later that week, and I just kept thinking, like, a human should not have to endure what we've endured to get here. This is too hard. This is crazy. What are we doing? And I just kept thinking about our kids and our family and how hard it was while they were so small and staying in hotels and working these weddings across the state. And I just kept thinking about this property and how we just knew that it was the right thing. We knew that this was God's plan in our life. And as cliche and crazy as it sounds, you know, I just kept thinking, how are we even surviving this? It's so hard. Why are we doing this? They're consistently telling us no, and it felt like we were just going back into a boxing ring over and over and over and just getting the crap beat out of us. To go into debt for like the rest of our lives. Like, what are we doing? And they finally voted and they passed it.
Mr. Lumpkins.
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Ms. Lachelette.
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes. Okay.
It took a while, but we finally got a conditional use permit from the county, which, you know, the county side of it, they certainly were sensible enough to know that there'd be a lot of tax income for the county, and They helped us out a lot and kind of guided us through the process.
And the level of relief that we felt was so crazy, and the amount of peace that just washed over us to know that at least that tumultuous past that we had to go through, really it was like the previous year of our life had been consumed by River Run. And here we were, and we were finally getting to the time where we were going to be unleashed on our own to move forward with this place and making it everything we dreamed for it to be and everything we knew it could be, and to be the most magical place for somebody to celebrate a wedding or a retirement party or the birth of a child or a baby shower or birthdays at the pool for all of these future clients. We could just picture it. The closing happened almost immediately following the Board of Supervisors yes. It had been scheduled, obviously pending each time, and then we kept having to push back and push back. So it was very difficult, the whole process. Everybody was doing their best to make it easy, but it was 4 sellers, 4 buyers, 2 real estate agents, but 4 different people involved, 2 brokerages, 4 attorneys. We were drafting the partnership agreements for the 4 of us to operate under. Of course, the 4 purchasers, we were embarking on this new business together. So there was just so many things happening immediately, and it was almost like the fire just lit underneath, and it was finally all happening. It just was the craziest thing. We felt like this process had been so drug out for so long. It was such an agonizing experience. And then all of a sudden it was just like the Band-Aid was ripped off, and then here we were. And the day that we closed on the property in October, it was wild. So we went to the attorney's office, signed all of the paperwork. There was all these other ancillary things happening with additional parcels of land and finding out properties were being double taxed and all these just really difficult extra things that any one of those things was just almost unheard of, but it was just piling on dozens of different layers at a time. None of it was easy. But we left the attorney's office. By the time we got to River Run, the moving trucks were already here with all of our stuff in it because it had been packed and it had been in trucks for some time waiting for us. And we started unloading right away, and our kids were running around inside, and keeping up with them was a job, in a place like this. And Andrew and I and the 2 of the children live on the 4th floor and manage the property as in-house owners. And we knew that was going to be stressful and another twist and turn of life, but we felt like that was the only way really to do it right. It was also the only way we could afford to move forward with everything, but it allowed us to be on property literally every waking moment from an hour after we signed the paperwork to purchase it. So we had, from the very beginning, this almost like deep relationship with the house and the land and the place, and we wanted to really do our due diligence and honor the property and bring it back to its glory. It had been vacant for close to 5 years by the time we got here. So there was, the family had taken fantastic care of it. The housekeepers were still in a couple of times a week cleaning and all of that. So it wasn't ever mismanaged or anything like that, but it just was so much that needed to be done inside and outside to bring it back to life. It had a vibe of like somebody's grandparents' house. So we had to do a lot of simplifying. We bought it with a property of all the contents intact. So the family had a few key pieces that they really wanted, and then they were able to take those, and everything else remained inside. So we had to kind of decipher what to keep, what to move around, what to sell, settle in as ourselves, as our family, and try to make a home for our kids. Our little boy had started a new school. We were trying to stay with our old babysitter for our daughter that was so young, and just we had so many things going on. We were at the phase of life where we needed to be potty training her, and we were instead like embarking on this massive endeavor. So it just was a really wild time. And every day at that time we were waking up thinking, how are we not a reality show? But we were so committed to this project and we just love it so much. So we really tried to start peeling back the layers of the onion and figuring out what was going to be in the best interest of all of our clients, what people were going to want out of this place. Really, we started the tours right away. We were already marketing the property before we even closed on it. We worked the Richmond Weddings Bridal Show in September before the October closing. And it just was like go time. You know, it was really time for us to finally be let out and into the next chapter of what we needed to do here at this place. And there was this energy and this electricity that you could feel every day when our feet hit the ground in the morning to start working on the project. And our little boy had to be picked up at 3 o'clock. So it was a short and a very intense, uninterrupted work day for that time frame of our life. But we did the best we could and we just pushed so hard. And our team was so great and everybody was so committed, so we couldn't have asked for any better. But we started on the commercial conversion right away as well. So we had gotten through the health department hurdles over the summer. We had done all the engineering studies for the wastewater treatment and how you process waste, you know, when you're not part of a municipality. We had done all of the well and septic upgrades and all of that engineering. We had laid out the parking lot locations and we started the very next week on the parking lot groundbreaking. It just was so much happening on any given day. At that time, there was 40 men here working construction. So it was just an unbelievable level of things happening, and I'm always at my desk trying to focus on, you know, these wedding packages and what to do to offer our clients and what does a welcome box look like and all of the new things that have to be done with a new business and a new venue. And in the meantime, acting as our own general contractor because there wasn't anybody to handle a commercial conversion besides us. There was nobody we could hire to take care of that. There wasn't one specific general contractor that could handle all of the different things that we had going on that we were required to fix and do. We were so fortunate to have found Conquest Moncure and Dunn to handle as a general contractor the commercial conversion staircase project that we had. And we were so fortunate to work with Wilton Companies for the ceiling project in the Tuscan Ballroom, because both of those were big check boxes on the commercial conversion requirements from the county.
My name is Jeff Modisette. I'm principal and co-owner of Conquest Moncure and Dunn Construction. We're a 101-year-old firm and traditionally have worked commercial, institutional, industrial, historic restoration, renovation, and done a fair amount of custom home building through the years and history of the company. Whereas I did not previously know Kim and Andrew Moody, the prior caretaker that was overseeing the home and its repairs from the Massey's residence, is an acquaintance of our family, and it suggested she give us a call when they were looking at performing some interior renovations here in order to comply with Goochland County's request for them to improve their accessibility and fire rating. We were approached in late 20, early 21 to go ahead and create an ADA toilet for them, carving out a portion of the existing kitchen where we were able to salvage existing casework, trim, and the little mural frescoes at the top of the ceiling. And our superintendent and two carpenters did a wonderful job creating the new toilet for them in the middle of the home. About 6 months later, they asked us to look at estimating and perhaps constructing an internal fire-rated stairwell through the eastern portion of their house, which was one, very expensive, and two, would have been horrendous aesthetically when you consider having to put a 2-hour fire-rated wall system from the basement to their residence area on the 4th level with fire-rated doors, exit signs. It would have really changed the interior look of the home. So fortunately, their fire rating consultant, along with John Dorlini there with Circle Studios in Roanoke, the architect for the project, was able to come up with a compromise and a workable solution with Goochland County for us to construct a 4-story exterior fire-rated stairwell for both egress and also it provided an extra convenience for catering kitchen access from the exterior. So the new structure is all steel, and then with an unusual requirement, we had to create a 2-hour fire barrier above the garage doors. Since we couldn't block or impede the doors, we had to make sure that there's no flames, if there was a catastrophic event, would actually, imperil anybody leaving or the home from the garage. So we came up with a concrete slab structural steel composite system and used it for the remainder of the stairwell, and we're able to come up with a 2-hour fire-rated enclosure that allows them to egress from any floor, any time of the day. We were able to open up the old windows and install new doors in them so we could keep at least the appearance of the exterior openings of the original home along the eastern facade. And I guess there were a few windows that we had to remove and infill with masonry that we set back to give it kind of a different look and appeal, so it didn't look totally out of place, so we could keep the perimeter of the window outline so that we could retain the 2-hour rating of the wall system. You'll notice if you go look at it closely, there are a few windows that are near the structure that the county required us to rate as well. And so fire-rated glass and new steel frames was inserted on the interior of the old wood window on the interior side that affects the kitchen, the bathroom, and some other ancillary areas as you go up vertically through the home. All in all, they were able to hopefully create new access and egress requirements for the county of Goochland. And at the same time, they were able to create additional fire sprinkler improvements by having a dry sprinkler system attached to the new structure. So in case there was ever a fire truck could come here and they could fill the system up with water and attach hoses at every level depending on where the fire may have emanated from. We were fortunate to work on the project with several subcontractors who had built this home in almost the 40-year earlier time period. The masonry firm of Southern Brick Contractors had performed all the masonry work. N.W. Martin Brothers Roofing performed our roofing work and reworked the shingles in custom fashion so we could make weather tight and waterproof the entries up at the 4th level that's wide open to the elements. We also worked with Baker & Hayeswood Mechanical Firm. When we cut the new openings, several of the openings had false window seats with ductwork running below them, so we had to rework the ductwork at the top level. And Baker & Hayeswood had performed the plumbing and mechanical work here originally, was well familiar with the structure, and we were able to utilize their services to rework the ductwork.
My name is Scott Brannon. I am the president of F. Richard Wilton Jr. Incorporated, based out of Richmond. We are a 3rd-generation plastering and drywall company started by my father-in-law, Richard Wilton, in 1953. Based in Richmond, we do work all over the state, however. We've been fortunate enough to work on projects as Monticello, the Governor's Mansion in Richmond, and the state capitol, as well as other notable historical properties throughout the state of Virginia. Most of our work is new plaster work, but we are fortunate enough to work on some really cool projects, including the River Run estate that we're in today. In the early 80s, we were part of the construction team that worked on the River Run estate for the Massey family. Our firm installed all the plaster on the walls and ceilings in addition to the plaster moldings that are throughout the house. Oftentimes when a property changes use from residential to a commercial property, as it did here at the River Run estate, county code requirements make for some adjustments. And one of the requirements was to separate the lower level ballroom ceiling from the upper level living spaces for fire purposes and safety purposes. So we were asked to come and look at the project by Kim and reviewed the drawings, and it was something that we could perform, so we did the work for them during the early stages of the project, doing the demolition of the existing ceiling to expose what was above the ceiling so the county could look at it to see what else may be of concern. So there were additional fire alarms added, heat sensors and detectors, in addition to some cabling for future lights and required items of the project. So we did the demolition, which took about 3 or 4 weeks. We had a 4 to 8 man crew here most any time. Once everyone's work was completed above the ceiling is when we installed the 2-hour fire-rated assembly that was required by the county to meet the current codes in Goochland County. So our scope of work included removing the existing ceiling and the beams, and none of that was fire-rated, so that's what the concern was with the County of Goochland. So we came in and we removed all the existing plaster ceiling and the wood beams that were ornamental only. Behind the wood beam is a structural steel member that was carrying the weight and of the upper floors above. So once all of that was demoed, the county came in, did another inspection of what was going to be required to complete the project to code. And after everyone completed their work above the ceiling, we came back in, installed a new framing ceiling system along with a fire-rated gypsum board assembly that would create the 2-hour separation between the ballroom on the lower level and the first floor living space. And then the wood beams were reinstalled back in the same place that they were originally. Again, they were strictly ornamental, they were not structural, so they could be taken down and reinstalled without affecting the structural integrity of the home.
And so we had a lot of heavy lifting in construction. It's finally at the point where it's starting to die down, but we went really hardcore for months and months and months. And 5 months after closing, the news started to happen that there was this virus. And then another set of curveballs, and it was just the most unbelievable set of circumstances to our industry specifically. You know, we were the very first ones closed and the very last industry to be reopened during COVID. And 14 months, the state of Virginia required our industry to be closed 5 months after we bought this multi-million-dollar endeavor. And it just felt so unbelievable. And we thought, well, here we are again, you know, and it just was like one insurmountable goal after another, and we would see the light of day finally at the end of this really long tunnel, and then this cloud would come back and cover over it, and we just kept thinking, what are we doing? And our parents were kind of in our ear saying, are you sure you should have done this? Or did you do the right thing? Do you think it's a mistake now? What are you thinking? Why don't you go get a regular job? Why don't you go work in corporate America? Those people are working at home. And here we are. We have basically no income coming in for months and months and months, and we weren't eligible for funding because we were a new business. And the way that the regulations were set and the economic disaster packages were looked at, they started, if you weren't a viable business, starting in February of 2019, you weren't eligible. And because of all of the things, our closing happened, and that was when we became a business, was October of 2019, so 5 months before COVID. I still can't even wrap my head around it now, you know, to think about all of the outgoing payments that we had during that time frame and how none of that ever let up. We couldn't stop paying the landscaper. We couldn't stop paying the electric bill. We couldn't stop paying the salaries of the staff. We couldn't stop paying the mortgage, but we weren't able to host events. So the income that was coming in was just deposits on future dates, and knowing as we were booking those that some of those may have to be moved, you know, because it was so uncertain at that time. When we moved to Goochland, we luckily found Heights Church, and we were really grounded in what we were doing here. We knew that we were responding to a calling. We knew that it was what we were supposed to do for the rest of our lives. So it helped keep our heads on our shoulders through all of the craziness we were going through. And we just always kept thinking about the families that we would serve, and all the brides that were going to get married here, and all the marriages that were going to happen here. And that was what we tried to focus on, and all of the happy things that were going to be celebrated at this beautiful place. So we really tried hard when we focused on the commercial conversion, and the world was closed, and Virginia was closed, and our industry was closed, and we were watching dozens and dozens of businesses, all these mom and pops lose everything. You know, all the wedding industry was just crumbling around us. There was probably a quarter of our industry went out of business during that time. People took 9-to-5 jobs and got out from underneath, you know, their dreams and their what they thought they were going to do the rest of their life. And like us, I think so many of us drained our retirements to stick to our goals and to stay focused. And there was a lot of months where we weren't sure if we were making the right decision. We had invested in this place, and we just kept thinking, are we going to lose everything? You know, at what point are we going to be able to reopen? At what point? And so we founded an industry organization with a lot of other wedding vendors called VOWS, and really started fighting over the reopening of our state. And that became our focus for a little while because we just weren't even allowed to work. But finally, here we are. And it is 2022, and we have finished the commercial conversion. We got our certificate for that last November. We waited to even do the ribbon cutting because we were like, who knows what they might take away from us. So we will just wait because we don't want to jinx ourselves, and we don't want to celebrate this big win and cut this ribbon if there's going to be more things that are added that we're required to do, because that's what it felt like for the previous years before that. And I look back and I'm like, how did we survive that? You know, how are we not hospitalized from stress and anxiety? This was crazy. How did we not file for bankruptcy? How is our family still together? How is our marriage still together? Like, how do our kids even love us? You know, we've had to put so much on hold for them, and we just have so many hopes for the future for this place.
I'm Ed Griffith, and I do all ground maintenance here on the property. It's taken about 3 to 4 years to get it to where we're at right now, probably about 2 to 3 weeks. We'll do some aeration and some seeding. Pretty much everything you see here is either fescue or Bermuda. A form of Bermuda is what it is. In cut-wise, it takes about 10 hours to cut the whole property if you're by yourself. 2 to 3 people, you can cut it down to about, we've gotten it down to about 5 hours. It's a pretty property to take care of. It's a lot of work. And just a lot of love coming out every week and making sure things are taken care of. I don't like using chemicals unless you have to, just for the simple fact of Mother Nature. Just let her do her thing, and if you let her do her thing and let the grass come in and grow as she needs to, it's going to take care of itself. The fountain was located on the bluestone patio in the back as you exit the back door from the basement or from the bar area. You walked out and it was right there at you. The biggest problem was just the way that it was designed. So we decided to move it out here to the front so you guys had something to see when you came in. 3 months of work, all hand work. There's a lot of work, a lot of love in that. Right now we're finishing installing low voltage lights to different trees just to give some, so you can see at night, because here, once it goes dark, it's dark. Just the size of the property, the way the property's set up, I mean, it turns pitch black. So we installed all these, did a bunch of work over the winter, did a bunch of pavers going down to the tennis court, added lights down there, so now we're just finishing up the light job up top here. We did this past winter. It's about 1,500 square feet of pavers and lights. We did lights on every tree, lights in the walkways, lights on the walls. We installed the walls. The hand railings were done afterwards. This was a really, really big project. It's all hand work. None of it was machined. It was all hand work. Each individual paver you see was hand tapped and placed. It was a lot of work, a lot of hours. We did this to get you guys to the tennis court. That's a venue down there, an extra venue that they do for large dinners and weddings and stuff like that. So that basically gives you a pathway down to the backside patio and the bluestone down to the pool house too. So it's, instead of people walking through the grass, now you got something nice to walk on. The low spot, like I told you guys the first, so everything in the middle drains here and to there. because you see how it crowns off. Well, Kim picked this spot, and I was like, "Are you sure you don't want to just go from there to there?" No, we can't do that because of the chairs. And I was like, "Okay." So we tried it, and this is the area that washed out from where you're standing down to that tree. We had a really bad rain. It was a rain ice storm. Came back the next day, and the whole thing slid. That had to be ripped back up, torn back up, and then relayed. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that people don't see underground, and moving parts that people don't understand to make a place look like this is. It's amazing. I mean, from when we first came on this property, it's crazy what this place has turned into, and it's only another season or two, this place would be golf course. I mean, the outside is right now, for me, is about 80%. Yeah, to be honest with you, there's some things that I'd like to tighten up, but that's just time. It just takes time. It's not something you can just throw a chemical down or do this or do that. It's Mother Nature does what she wants to do, and we just got to take care of what she's given us. So. And I've been on site, and once that sun goes down, this place goes dark. And I can tell you, I've grown up in a country setting, and I can tell you this is the darkest property I've ever seen in my life. Really what did it was they decided to do the walkway down to the tennis court and down to the Bluestone. You know, I was like, hey, why don't we add lighting while we're there? We already got the trenches, some of the trenches are open, and then that led into a meeting with the electrician to do all the lamp posts, and they were like, what about out front? So there's four transformers running all the lights that you see. The good thing is with the low voltage lighting, it used to be years ago you could only have 2 or 3 depending on the size of your run and all that, because it was done by watts. Well, now they've gone to the LED bulbs, and it's amazing. I mean, it's changed everything. You can have 10 fixtures on one line coming out of a transformer. I mean, one transformer now can run 100, 200 lights if you wire it properly. I just added 4 more over there by the parking lot, and then we did another one over here on this side of the property, and I've got to finish down there by the garage area. I've got to do some work down there lighting wise, but I think they're almost done. We're almost at the end of that. Growing up in this area and seeing what this is starting to turn into, it's only the beginning for this property, I have a feeling. Doug usually, when he does something, he does it right, and they're definitely doing the things the right way. They're taking their time, they're making decisions as they need to. They're not just throwing things in and doing things. I mean, they're really trying to figure out how to do it to maintain the personality of the property, because this property definitely has a personality, and we're almost there. They're close. I'd say they're 80% out here to where they really want to be overall. The people that built this home and this property, I mean, it's amazing some of the things that I've seen. And the things that are here are they're not built like this anymore. The average public person doesn't really catch on to it, but an actual craftsman and somebody that sees it knows that it's just not done like this anymore.
I'm Andy Cobb, and I was introduced to River Run in 1983, working with Diane Saunders, who was the designer selected by the Masseys to do all of the interior design work at River Run. And at the time, I was Mrs. Saunders' design assistant to work with her and do drawings and measurements and all the follow-up work on her design work throughout the house. Well, this was my first design job. I was still at the University of Virginia as a student in art history and was introduced to the house, and it was under construction. So the scale of the house, the level of work that was going on was at a very high level, but it just seemed normal to me at the time. And Mrs. Saunders worked at such a high level that it was just standard practice for her. Mrs. Saunders worked directly with Mr. and Mrs. Massey to make all the selections throughout the house. And she studied the plans, studied the period of architecture for the project itself, and did lots of research to get all of the details correct for an 18th century Georgian house in very high style and at a large scale. So she was very prepared when she came into the project to tackle what was a big blank slate at the time and needed to be developed and fully furnished. So the Masseys did start out from zero with this house, and with Mrs. Saunders made many trips to New York, worked with the best vendors in New York and England to provide furniture, fabrics, draperies, rugs, lighting, and all of the accessories. And she had been in New York for years as a designer, so she had inside access to the best upholsterers, drapery, workrooms, custom wallpaper companies, custom fabric companies. So there was a lot of custom work done in this house that was guided by Mrs. Saunders' hand and her incredible sense of style. And the Masseys wanted a very formal Georgian home that was designed for entertaining large numbers of people. So the house was meant to impress, was meant to engage large numbers of people in parties and other meetings and activities. And the Masseys really loved to entertain on a grand scale. And in the early 80s, that was so common for people of that level. They loved big parties, and they loved to have a great time, and they loved elegant parties with beautiful clothes and beautiful food and beautiful flowers and a beautiful background to present it all in. But this was also the same period that John and Patricia Kluge built Albemarle House outside of Charlottesville. And this house is very much in that vein of a very grand English manor house and the estate itself around it. So the setting and the architecture of the house set a very grand formal tone. Well, there's a beautiful park-like setting for the house that is very typical of English Georgian houses of the period. And the Masseys, with their architect, cited this house very specifically to have the view of the James River and the view beyond. So all of the space feels like it's part of this property, which is quite expansive, but you get the beautiful view of the river and the other side of the river as well. So this feels like a much larger property than it actually is. This part of Virginia looks so much like the countryside of England that the house sits perfectly in its landscape and feels very much at home here. Both Mr. and Mrs. Massey were directly involved, and Mrs. Massey very much. She and Mrs. Saunders went to New York many times. Mrs. Massey loved to stay in the Carlisle, and she loved to have lunch at La Caravelle, which was the most beautiful French restaurant in New York at the time. So they would go for 4 or 5 days and do shopping trips, visit the upholstery companies, make selections for fabrics, also go to the lighting woman who made the most beautiful handmade silk shades, which are throughout this house. So all the little finishing, beautiful details, they spent lots of time together making those selections. Yeah, the house is full of custom work, from hand-carved pieces of furniture that were made specifically for the Masseys to the oak damask wallpaper in the entry hall, which we designed specifically for this house. There are a lot of oak and acorn motifs throughout the plasterwork and the carving. And I designed the wallpaper that's in the front hall, which is oak leaf damask, but within the design are Mr. Massey's initials, which are part of the design. And that was all done by Louis Bowen Wallpapers in New York, which was a wonderful little custom wallpaper company that had been around for many years. And Mrs. Saunders had a working relationship with Mr. Bowen. So that was all done specifically for this house. There's no other wallpaper like it in the world. So, and Mrs. Massey was a huge fox hunter and rode with the Deep Run Hunt Club. So there were, in the breakfast room originally, that was all a hunt motif. The furniture in that room was covered in the red wool that are used to make the red riding jackets that people use for fox hunting. And that was imported especially from England, just to upholster those pieces. So. The other really custom piece, which is not in the house at the moment, for the drawing room, we designed I think that rug was 24 by 40 feet long, custom wool, hand-carved rug that's a direct reflection of the plasterwork on the ceiling in that room. And it's hand-carved, so it's shaped just as the plasterwork is, and then had different shading of the types of wool to show the shadow lines of all the plasterwork. So the man who did the plasterwork was from Washington, and all of the molded ceilings were done by hand and applied by hand and finished here in the house. Well, the fireplace here in the ballroom is a Louis XVI original French marble mantle from the early 18th century that was imported and installed in the house. And the room was partially designed around this mantle, since it was an existing antique piece. I was lucky enough to work with Diane Saunders as my mentor. She had worked in New York for many years at W&J Sloan and had worked with all the best resources in New York. And she had an incredible understanding of historical interiors as well as modern interiors, but she had an amazing capacity of putting a house together to make it look like it had been there forever. And this house really feels like an 18th century house that's been here for 250 years. And all of the details and the finishing work that she did to create that atmosphere, that you really feel like you're walking into a different world. I moved to Boston before the house was done, but I think her main work was from 1982 to about 1986. And she passed away in November of 1986. So I came back and helped finish the last few little details that needed to be done in the house at the time. So lots of history and lots of learning. That was the thing, I learned so much with this project that I was just a sponge. And Mrs. Saunders was such an amazing teacher. And Mr. and Mrs. Massey were so gracious to this young man and invited us into their home and were happy to work with me and teach me as well. So it was an incredible education. But this house, I think, just has that graciousness, and it's very inviting. And it's a wonderful place to just be in the midst of it. The eagle and the phoenix are very common designs in 18th century English design, furniture, and in architecture. And a lot of that's taken actually from ancient Chinese designs that the English incorporated into their design, and the French as well in the 18th century. The Tuscan ballroom was originally designed for large parties as well. For more casual parties, it has access directly to the pool and the tennis courts, and has a large bar and 2 big stone fireplaces. So that was for more casual, but still very large parties. And that opens directly out to the terrace that faces the river. And these were very elegant parties with evening dresses and tuxedos and beautiful food and beautiful flowers and live music on the pianos. They had jazz bands that played here too for some of the big parties.
Out front here in the front of the estate at River Run, it's a great place to begin and end your special day here at River Run. A lot of our send-offs at the end of the night are here in front of the estate with big fantastic exits, sparklers, and glow sticks, glow wands, all kinds of fun, exciting ways to end the day, but also a great entrance to the estate for your guests and for yourself as you begin your morning here at River Run. We also have some really incredible ceremony spaces here here in the front of the property, the first of which being our beautiful fountain at the end of the front drive circle. And this actually was originally in the Bluestone Terrace when the property was first purchased back in 2019, but we've moved it to the front for a beautiful focal point and a great place for a ceremony and also inviting your guests to the property when they arrive. Our last ceremony location that I want to point out is our new oak grove. We have moved the top of the gate. The gate topper has been moved and put up on this beautiful, almost stage-like area underneath of the shade of the oak trees. It is stunning in the evening and afternoon and a really special place to celebrate a ceremony. Another great amenity at the estate at River Run is our riverside pool. It has a beautiful view of the entire property at the estate as well as the river. It's a great location for a rehearsal dinner, a private pool party, a poolside ceremony, or even just hanging out on the day of the wedding and hanging out with your family and friends. We most commonly also see some of our clients utilizing this space for getting ready. So inside the pool house, we have a full restroom and a nice sitting area, a full bar, and lots of room to kick back, relax, and enjoy as the day continues. Inside the pool house is another great space for our clients' partners to get ready during the day. We have lots of amenities in here for relaxing and enjoying, a full bar for laying out of snacks and foods and drinks and beverages to keep yourselves libated and comfortable. And we also have a full restroom with a full shower, so if anyone does decide to take a swim that morning, there's lots of room and time to clean up and be ready for the special part of the day. Some really fun architectural moments in here are continued even down into the pool house away from the main house with the beautiful marble flooring and the rotunda at the above on top of the roof. It's a really great, fun, relaxing place for our clients to continue enjoying their day. We're starting here in one of the restroom suites of the primary wedding suite, and this is primarily where we see our guests start their day. So this room is most commonly used for makeup services. The natural lighting that comes in from these beautiful windows over the soaking tub is beautiful and great for makeup. And we see our clients really enjoying with their families and their wedding parties, relaxing throughout the large space, which then leads in really, really beautifully into the bedroom portion of the suite. And lots more room for sitting, relaxing, and enjoying. Spreading out, again, another amenity that we really enjoy and our clients tend to enjoy is the amount of space that they have throughout the entirety of the wedding suite. So here, again, great view of the river out onto the Bluestone Terrace. If there's any ceremony setups or anything going on, they get a nice sneak peek view while that's happening.
And the bedroom features an 18th century French marble mantle that was purchased for the house, and the room was designed around it. The room also features a beautiful plasterwork ceiling, which is done in the French taste from the English 18th century to work with the mantle and the other design of the house. The walls are covered in a beautiful hand-printed French drapery wallpaper, printed in France and taken from an 18th century prototype.
And then we still have one more part of the suite into the other restroom. And this is a great place where we have lots of hair services, another great place to spread out, another full restroom for any getting ready needs that there are. So we love that our clients have lots of expansive space to relax, enjoy, and be comfortable with their families and friends. In addition to the expansive wedding primary suite, our clients also have access to the entirety of the guest room floor. So we're gonna go ahead and take a look this way. Out through the foyer, we still have great view of the grand foyer, and it leads us over into the Lavender Orient suite. This is another excellent place for our clients and guests to relax and enjoy. We most commonly see this space utilized by mothers, grandmothers, extended family who need a space to relax and enjoy. If there's a larger wedding party, it's great to kind of spill out into this space as well, complete with a full beautiful restroom and a relaxing bed and sitting area if any guests need to kick up their feet or let a load off for a little while.
This bedroom features a chinoiserie mantle mirror featuring phoenixes and the pagoda. But one of the beautiful designs that Mrs. Saunders came up with was this incredible pagoda balance with the bell drops either side in a hand-printed chinoiserie fabric. The chinoiserie style was popular in England and France in the 18th century due to all the interest with the China trade for the English and the French and the Dutch as well. So you see these Chinese details in a fantastical style in many interiors from the 18th century.
And then another space additionally is across the hall is our green garden bedroom, which is now converted into a sitting room. And this is a great space for our clients to really relax, nice, lovely sitting space, enjoy a glass of white wine or a mimosa, a great space to collect everyone as we get closer to the wedding festivities. This space also is complete with another beautiful, lovely full restroom that has great views out onto the tennis court and the pool. And again, just a really unique, beautiful architecture and design that really helps tie the whole element of the estate in together. From the guest room suite, we come down the dueling staircases into the grand foyer. This is the first thing your guests typically see as they come in and get to experience all that is the estate at River Run.
This is a double height Georgian entry with a beautiful Adam-style plasterwork ceiling and incredibly beautiful floating circular staircases, which are incredibly gracious and beautiful to walk up and down. This was the entry hall that the Masseys always greeted their guests, usually with a cocktail in hand. Diane Saunders, as the designer, chose to decorate the room in full formal Georgian style. All the columns are marbleized by hand to match the marble floors, and all of the Corinthian capitals are picked out in 24 karat gold leaf, which was very much a period detail of the 18th century. The Eastern European craftsman, John Balassa, did all of the glazing and marbleizing and the gilding throughout the house. And that was done in a very correct 18th century style and not seen in 20th century houses very often.
Then, as we travel through the grand foyer and past our Woodhaven billiard room, we can journey into the Wedgwood ballroom, which is a beautiful and stunning way to have lovely natural light into the room, a great view of the river, and excellent detailing work, plaster on the ceiling, and a stunning chandelier. This space is used for a variety of different things. We see our clients using it for a ceremony, a cocktail hour, dinner, a bridal luncheon, all kinds of opportunities within this space, and we love to see the creativity of our clients as they get to plan their event. We love sharing the history and the colors of this space and the design elements and how some of our clients can tie that into their event.
When the house was built, it has these elaborate plaster ceilings up above, and the designer, Diane Saunders, decided to treat the ceiling as an 18th century Wedgwood platter. So within the plaster work, there are 5 different shades of blue and blue-green to pick out the decoration and add depth to all of the detail within the ceiling and all of the handmade plaster work. All of the griffins and the other details are typical of Wedgwood and jasperware from the 18th century. And we spent hours laying out the colors for the painters to have very specific details for their placement. And the painters spent about 2 months in this room laying in the colors and cutting them in within the plasterwork details. We're in the musicians gallery of the Wedgwood room, and I wanted to point out a set of beautiful early 18th century ballroom chairs that originally came from Castle Howard in England. And Castle Howard actually is known from the Bridgerton series as the county seat of the Duke of Hastings. But these were in the original house and were purchased by the Masseys in the early 1980s. They're a set of 10 with the interlocking wreaths in gilded gold on the back. And in their beautiful original condition.
Coming off of the grand foyer, we are in the Cameo Ballroom, which is a really beautiful space to host a variety of different elements of your event. We have had all kinds of things such as rehearsal dinners and cocktail hours. Cocktail hour especially is really wonderful in this space as it flows into the grand foyer, but also flows directly into the Wedgwood Ballroom and out onto the brick terrace. There's all kinds of spaces to explore for your guests and enjoy, all while enjoying the amenities of the beautiful view of the river and a beautiful built-in bar. Spilling out of the Cameo Ballroom, we are now on to the expansive brick terrace. With the estate being built up so beautifully on the bluff over the river, we have an incredible view over the James. It is a stunning view for cocktail hour, an intimate dinner or ceremony out in this space. We see all kinds of uses for this area. And then it leads down to the stunning bluestone terrace. And as we head down the, again, dueling staircases down to the bluestone terrace, we see lots of clients using this as their grand entrance into a ceremony out on the bluestone, or great for entrances of family and wedding party to the guests during dinner. This space down on the bluestone is frequently used for our ceremonies. A beautiful backdrop with the James River behind is a really popular use here. We've also had some really lovely dinners and cocktail hours with bistro lighting and all sorts of creative ways to make this space the best for any part or element of your event. Coming in off of the bluestone terrace into the lowest level of the estate, we have the Tuscan Ballroom. This space is most commonly used by our clients for the dinner and dancing portion of their event. We've also seen some beautiful candlelit ceremonies as well. This space is expansive and gives that Tuscan winery feel. The warmth and the love that really emanates in this space is really quite incredible. We also have the beautiful wine cellar off of the Tuscan that is utilized for a sweetheart table, dessert room, photo booth, coffee bar, all kinds of really fun and exciting different things that can be brought to your special day. This space just off to the side is really excellent use, which then connects back into the expansive Tuscan Ballroom for dinner and dancing. We also have an extensive, large built-in bar, and there are 4 restrooms on this level, so all of your guests are comfortable and have a great time throughout the evening. In the formal dining room, we see lots of different events held here as well. We've seen quite a few bridal luncheons and day after breakfasts, important corporate meetings, as well as a nice, relaxing, comfortable place for guests to enjoy during cocktail hour. It's a really great space to host a more formal setting meeting or a formal meal, but again, even just a great place for your guests to enjoy as they peruse the main floor during cocktail hour.
The dining room features a beautifully detailed 18th century mantel that's all hand carved. And the original window treatments for the house are in a soft green silk damask, handmade by Scalamandre. And this damask is a document that was used in the Juliet Gordon Low house. She was the founder of the Girl Scouts of America. And down the center of the table is a very large and unusual 18th century mirrored plateau that was used for displaying flower arrangements and sweetmeats at large gatherings in the 18th century. This is a particularly unusual one because of its size and the fact that it's still all 5 parts are together.
Well, I kind of do behind the scenes work, so I do the bookkeeping and accounting for the business. I have a property management background. I graduated from Virginia Tech in 2005 in property management, and do real estate as well, and then I got into accounting. So this is kind of a combination of all of those things put together. And but I do a lot of the, the books for the property, but also a lot of the grounds kind of I don't want to say inspections of, but day-to-day operations, help manage some of the projects with the property.
I handle most of the wedding-related tours for the families, help a lot of the couples, and the corporate side, get through the booking process, come and visit the property, learn more about it, learn how things operate here, who our vendors are, and just the general overall management of the estate within the context of how it relates to our couples and the staff here and the crew that serves everybody that visits. So as a wedding planner for 18 years of my life, basically since I got out of college, I've been interacting with families of brides and grooms and people that were getting married and celebrating the biggest day of their life. One of our best friends, he equates what I do to the Super Bowl. He was like, it's basically like you run the Super Bowl, it's the biggest day of their career, of their lives, of that moment. And you're responsible for it. How does that make you feel? And it's daunting. I think all of us here feel the weight of that and how big of a responsibility it is. And there is no room for error. There's no room for anything falling between the cracks, the weeds, the lawn, the landscaping, the linens, the surfaces. Everything has to be pristinely clean and perfectly pulled together aesthetically, and we have to have all the right pillows and the chairs, and there can't have no little hiccups. There's no room for error when you serve a population like this, and I think we understand the magnitude of that. And as people, I think it's really, we knew what we were getting into on the wedding side of it, no question. But the hospitality side of it has been something that's really surprised me. It has definitely pushed me to our limits, and sometimes I find myself, wondering about hotels and inns and places like that, bed and breakfast, like the level of service that the clients expect and the level of hospitality that we want to provide. We just want them to feel like they're family here. And it's such a fine line because we're serving them and we're employed by them. And it's also just that preparing this place for them is a really major responsibility. As a wedding planner, we knew what it looked like in operating a very smooth wedding day and a very calculated production schedule and a very detail-oriented timeline and making sure things were flawless. But what I don't think that I ever really understood was the level of hospitality that it was going to take to manage a place like this. I always thought of it as just preparing the place, and it's so much more than that. We have so much interaction with our families from the time they tour, and then they come back for, bringing the in-laws to see it for the first time and being here for their engagement photos and their bridal portraits and being here sometimes right before the wedding with their bridesmaids. And then they come back for their 45 or 60 day walkthrough, and we see them with their families and get to interact with their families and how the dynamics between them and the couple and their families. And then, their caterer's here, their planner is here, sometimes we see their florist or photographer as part of that meeting. And then we see them on their rehearsal day, and we see them on their wedding day and their weekend, and then rehashing the stories the next day if they come back, to pick up their items or their family slips back to get vehicles that they've left overnight. And it just is such a joy to be part of their lives in those transitions. And I think that has really fueled us for the last couple of decades and how we've done our jobs. But the level of interaction of that I look forward to is seeing them come back and do maternity photos. We've now have 2 babies that are going to be born soon from the River Run wedding. So looking forward to having those families back here with their kids doing family photo shoots and all of that. I'm really excited about that, and some of the local families and being able to, help them for retirement parties or pool parties or the interconnectedness that has started, because we've been very fortunate as a planning company to serve our families for younger siblings or when cousins get married and that kind of thing. But physically as a property, that's something that I'm really excited about is, having a couple back for their first anniversary or their 5-year wedding anniversary picnic on the grounds or a maternity photo shoot. or a 5-year-old's pool party or whatever that might be. So I just think that that is a really neat part of that hospitality and that big piece of like making it all full circle. Prior to coming to River Run, we had a conventional family home, you know, just a 4-bedroom, 3 bath kind of situation, just like every American family imagines themselves in. And we came here knowing it was going to be pretty different. And, you know, we were already in a rural area, so Goochland was a perfect fit for that. We're actually a lot closer to the city now than we ever have been. So that has been a big change. For us, the kids' education was really important to us, and ironically, both of our children are students of our business partner, Tamra, at the Adams International School. So that's been a really comforting piece of all of this, is like, despite all of the changes that we had to make as a family and uprooting the kids and taking them an hour farther away from their grandparents, which wasn't very popular, we've gotten to see them grow educationally and the opportunities that they've had here in Goochland while still being in a rural, like agricultural area, but much closer to the city. So they've been able to do a lot of really great things that they've grown to. I always think about our kids. They have the least conventional childhood of any children that I know. Like, you know, at 5 years old, we were having our little boy help us set up tables and chairs, and he knows how to set a charger and a napkin, all of those kinds of things. And last fall, we were breaking down from a wedding out on the summer court. It was a huge outdoor tent, and it was probably a 3-day installation. And on Sunday afternoon, I took the kids down to the pool to swim, and they were taking a break from swimming, and we're breaking down from the wedding. And I look around and I don't see our little boy, and he was 6 at the time, and I hear him say, "Going up," and then hear this motor, and he's on the lift gate of the lighting company's truck, and he's operating their lift gate and like lifting cases of lighting, and he knows their truck and how it's organized, and he's putting the specific bulbs in the locations that they go in on his truck. And that was just so funny to me. Like, there he is in his bathing suit having this childhood moment of his. And, you know, probably last summer, I remember on a Friday when the children were out of school, they saw the Rent-A-Quip trailer pull in with the rental company. And of course, we have a lot of the regular vendors here all the time that we love and respect, and they take great care of the property. And you know, here comes one of the foremen in the trailer and the truck, and he's backing it up, and our kids are running through this outdoor staircase as fast as they can with their Nerf guns. And I opened the front door to call them back, and I watched them, and they're backing the rental guys up into their trailer like they're holding them hostage. And you know, you see the guys with their hands up, and it's just so funny, like all these memories of building this place here with the two of us and the children. They're like right there with us through it, and the you know, the things that they're exposed to and the work ethic that they are receiving from all of this, I think is something that has been a byproduct that I hadn't really expected. I kind of thought of our family as a separate thing than the operations of this place, but they're very much a part of the office culture. When they're out of school, they have their own workspaces, and yeah, it's just been a good situation. I think it would have broken a lot of people and a lot of families, but it has built us up, I think.
We've got a really solid foundation, especially with working together for so many years growing up, that it's, you know, we work well together, and it's been good for our relationship. And you know, they always say when you work together, when you double it on how many years that you've been married or something, but we, you know, we work well together.
Yeah. But being on the 4th floor in the servants' quarters here at River Run, we're very much the servants for sure. Kind of operating the house and the property nonstop, and we just I think as a family, try to carve out any extra time that we can around the rentals that we have and see what we can enrich the kids' lives and show them new things. But they have such an appreciation of the land too. We come from a family of farmers and agriculture people, and I think, they already feel so connected to this place. It's probably hard for them to imagine being anywhere else now that they've been here a couple of years. Our little boy loves to kayak, so hopping on at the Maidens bridge with me in our kayak is one of his favorite things to do. I think it's really just because he likes snacks, but he likes to pack the snacks for the trip. But I think just in general, there's so much that even though we sacrifice so much as a family, they have so many great opportunities here on the land and exploring the 62 acres and being near the river and just having that kind of childhood where they are experiencing growing up in the country in the proximity to the city and the sports and education offerings that they have. So we feel really, really fortunate as a family of all of that. The kids have such a unique perspective because sometimes I hear it in how they talk about things. Their friends are so enamored, like they'll come over and they're like, "This is your house? This is where you live?" And Pierre's just like, "No, I live upstairs in the apartment." And it's like, this is somebody else's house down here. There's almost this disconnect from it. So I think that's for us, how we tried to draw healthy boundaries so that they don't think that this is normal for them, because where we live looks like a 4-bedroom ranch house. It just happens to sit on top of all of this. So, just trying to keep them grounded in things. They're mischievous just like anybody else. I find their Nerf bullets around, and sometimes I find a Barbie, in the pool skimmer or something like that, a little unicorn floating, or, in a boxwood tree they've been playing in or something like that. So it still brings a smile to my face when I walk through on a tour and I notice little things like that, they're just having their regular childhood in the midst of all this craziness. So it's kind of fun.
Going into a little too much detail, but I was going to talk about how we met, just to kind of lead up to where we are now. But we were both lived in Nottoway County, but I didn't meet Kim until we were in the 7th grade, where our middle school was for the whole county. And we were good friends throughout high school, just best friends. I always tried to ask him out, but it never worked out. We just we're best friends, and then we
worked together in high school.
We did. Worked at my stepdad's restaurant. We hung out a lot just as friends, and Kim went to JMU and I went to Virginia Tech, and we visited a couple of times. And then our second year of college, we visited one weekend, and something I guess it had changed from the previous times, but don't know what it was. But we started dating then, and so we worked in Harrisonburg together, and Kim started her wedding planning business in 2004, and we moved to Stanton, moved different parts of the state, then moved to Orange.
We were basically flipping houses. Right. We would live in them for a year and a half, and Andrew would go to work, and I would renovate the properties and plan weddings. And
so that was for several years until 2010 or so. We decided to move back to our where we grew up in Nottoway County, and Kim, of course, continued with the wedding planning, but we decided to open a retail store. Not really decided to. We kind of had to find space for the wedding planning company. We couldn't find a small office, so we found a space that was.
We could do mixed use.
We could do a mixed use, so do retail and office. And so we, started the store then in 2010 or 11, and we had that for many years. Opened up one in Carytown, and then
the shops at River Road.
Then the shops at River Road after that. But we really.
After COVID, we never really loved the stores. It was just something we were kind of doing for the local community in Nottoway County, and we loved being able to help them with that. And then pre-COVID, there were managers in place that helped run those, but after COVID, it wasn't realistic for us to keep management teams in place and therefore not sustainable for us to continue to operate. So we had to make some pretty major changes so we could focus all of our energy here. So this is the long haul.
That's right. So, yeah,
Here we are.
Yeah, we've been working, but together, complementing each other's, I guess, businesses with our strengths. Since 2004, since you started planning the weddings. And,
we've been working together
been,
since probably
in high school.
1998.
Right, that's right. So we really work well together as a couple. We just both know each other's strengths and weaknesses, and this working together here is really just a dream, I guess you could say. Just doing both, working in the professions that we want to work in. I still get to do what I enjoy doing, with real estate, property management, and accounting. And Kim, of course, is doing what she loves, and so it's really good all around. And as a family, we really works well here. We're hoping to expand some options with the property in the future. We'd like to add some cottages maybe on the property for overnight guests for the bridesmaids, family, things like that, to stay the night before and night of the wedding. And maybe one day, if things work out, it'd be nice to have a spa area, overlooking the lake, just like a building where the bride and bridesmaids, or even groom and groomsmaid, anybody could come get some spa services done the day of the wedding, or even the week of the wedding if they're in from out of town. We could even have accommodations for out-of-town guests to come for several nights if they wanted to and enjoy the property.
We have this vision of that hillside over there that is just right on the cliff of the river, just being, like Andrew said, a walkout spa and a small inn, maybe a 20, 25 bedroom inn that is open for the community to use, during the weekdays, and then probably specific to the families here booking on the weekends. And we just picture this little cul-de-sac of cottages over where they could spend the night if they wanted to and have overnight rentals. We would love, in the longer term plan, to build an even bigger ballroom, as if we don't have enough already to take care of. There's 3 ballrooms here as it is, but we often think about, what if we could seat 400? What if we could seat 450 for a plated meal? And so we often think about what that next step might look like in the future. And I think there's just so many opportunities here. It's hard to even wrap our heads around all the opportunities of things that could be. So
maybe one day having catering on site, or that's too much for me to manage, or anybody here to manage. But just if we built a commercial kitchen just for the caterers, to work out of, not
right?
Catering on site. But if we could expand those facilities, I think it would make things easier on our vendors and make the process of the day go a little bit smoother. But everything's been going great so far. It's been it's a beautiful place to have a wedding, and if it was built for hosting events, that's when it was built. That's what it was for. So we're been fairly successful so far, and Kim does a great job managing all of the day-to-day operations with the clients and vendors, and it's a lot to do, but we enjoy it.
We love it, yeah.
Love it. I'm scaling back some of my bookkeeping clients right now so I can spend more time here because I'm needed more to do more work. And
we're always asking him to do more and more and more, and he's like, I don't have enough hours in a week. And we're always telling him there's nothing more important than this place. So the other thing too, I think, is it's been very humbling for us as a couple and as a family to be able to serve the families that rent the property here, whether it's weddings or retirements, corporate dinners, all these different special moments in their families' lives. The seriousness of preparing the property for that place for them is not lost. It's with the weddings, it's the biggest day of their family's life up until that point. Until babies are born, it's the biggest day of that family's celebration together. So we always knew how serious that was. I think at a venue in general, it's a lot of work to prepare. At a venue of this magnitude, it's a massive amount to shoulder. And then coming out of COVID has layered on, other difficulties with supply chain and staffing shortages and manpower and all of that, but also the number of people coming and RSVPing to events is much higher than it ever has been, because people are so excited to celebrate and to be happy again and to be social again. So it's almost like, I think we've said from the beginning, it has always felt like to us that God went before us and prepared a place for us to call home for the next chapter of our work life, and that the place that River Run offers our families is just an absolutely remarkable space. It's just so unimaginable that it even existed before. So it's a special treasure that we are really feel honored to be able to open up to Richmond and Charlottesville and the Commonwealth of Virginia as a place for them to host their families and friends.
One of my favorite parts about doing the events here is the day of the event, helping getting the property ready and blowing off the sidewalks, picking up any trash that may be lingering from the previous wedding or something that hasn't gotten, but opening up, preparing and opening up the house that morning. And it's exciting to hear the brides and bridesmaids getting ready and know that they chose here to have their special day. And
we walk through the halls working, and the whole foyer and the hallways are just filled with laughter and music and enjoyment, and it's just the best feeling. It makes all of the pressure and stress and roadblocks and all of the difficulties worth it. It's that energy that happens at the receptions specifically is just an undeniable level of excitement. And playing off of that too, I think one of my most incredible experiences here at the property, day after day after day, when we're hosting weddings, is peeking over the balcony or peeking out the window or wherever that couple's ceremony is, and just seeing those moments where they're actually exchanging their vows and how precious that is. I think as a wedding planner, I've always been so busy. I've never noticed those details as that was happening, because I'm always like, okay, on to cocktail hour, make sure that's set up. But as the venue, getting to take that second to peek out and watch that exchange happen, it really is very grounding, and it reminds you really why you've sacrificed so much to be part of that.
Mm-hmm.